Chair of the Legislative Committee for the Colorado Forest Health Advisory Council. And we will now take roll call.
All right, I'll go down the list. Samantha Albert is excused. She said she would be a little late. Christy Belton.
Morning.
Good morning, Christy. Katie McGrath Novak. Looks like she's not quite here. Pat Dorsey. Director Matt McCombs or designee.
Hi.
Okay, we have James Lucero. Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally.
Present.
Mark Morgan.
Present.
Morning, Mark. Julie Stencil.
Good morning.
Morning, Julie. Councilman Sylvan White Skunk. And Commissioner Veronica Medina.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. So we do have quorum, and we also have Aaron Citron and Rob Addington from the Nature Conservancy with us. And Aaron, can you say your last name again? I don't want to get that wrong.
No, you said it right. It's Citron.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Welcome, everyone.
Oh, welcome. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you being here today. We'll move on to our next agenda item, and thank you, Courtney, for doing that. We have now our minutes. I hope you had a chance to review those. Anyone have any additions, edits, or questions about the minutes from our previous meeting? Okay, I welcome a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, could you raise your hand and signal by saying aye? Aye?
Aye.
All those in favor, sorry. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
There's anyone opposed? Okay, we will now, thank you all and appreciate you looking at those. Then we'll now move on to our guest and presenter. And I want to just thank Clark Hemker, right, from the Colorado Fire Commission for coming today to present about the subcommittee, the Prescribed Fiber Subcommittee. And I believe, Clark, it's myself and Katie Novak that serve on that committee, and we are pleased to have you along with many others. And we're pleased to have you here today, and we appreciate your time so much. Do you need to have share screen to help with a presentation or anything like that?
No, ma'am. I don't have a whole lot for it because, well, I'll explain in a second here. Kind of where we're at, and just going to give kind of a real high level overview, if that works for you.
Great. And did I mispronounce your name? I apologize if I
No,
did.
ma'am. Yep, Hemker.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, please proceed. We really are pleased to have you here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, as I'm sure most of you are well aware, the whole prescribed fire topic is a doozy. And so, as far as the prescribed fire subcommittee went, we started over a year ago, but we had about 6 months of kind of meeting, and we were missing some key personnel. So we kind of stopped in having it, and we had a couple in-person meetings, and we basically were developing a strategic plan, and that was part of DFPC and Colorado State Forest Service coming together on what we were working on and what we were trying to hone in on. And so there was a list of notes of important things, but that strategic plan from them was kind of the forefront. They got together, met, came up with some ideas and having it. And so basically where we are right now is we broke down into two task forces. The pile burning was kind of where we needed to concentrate on right now, what we having just to get the ball rolling. And so we had this non-government organization increasing the burning capacity for task force. What was it? It might have been closer to 3 weeks now, 3 weeks ago. Those task forces met. And we had a lot of similar people that were sitting in on those task forces, as well as there's a lot of similarities between those too, that we decided to combine those two task forces into one. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We have another, I think it's the first or second week of January, we'll have another full prescribed fire subcommittee meeting. And that's where we're going to have Mike Morgan's going to bring and present some stuff on just for where the Federal Fire Commission got done, and they have that big packet of way too many pages to try to read, but they have a bunch of recommendations they're going, and so he's going to kind of dive into some of that stuff that they're working on the federal level, and we're going to hopefully we can either hold hands and work through some of those, things that are together. Otherwise, there might be some things that we don't necessarily have to focus or concentrate on. There might be other groups that are doing that too. So we're just going to kind of go over that in January. If there's any additional people you guys want, because we do have a few Forest Health Council that are sitting on there to help, relay information back and forth. But if there's anything else that you want, by all means, you're more than welcome to join in. But to go back on those task forces, we combined them. We're waiting on, I'd have to look at the email. We don't have another time set up yet when we're combining them, because we were waiting for some of those other non-government organizations that are doing the pile burning heavy, because as we were talking, we didn't really have any of those people sitting on the task force. So we're waiting to have that. And if you guys know of anybody, please pass along the information. We'd love to get some of those involved. And I also forgot, I just recently reached out to, so we have, I have some people coming from, let me think of the CDPHE, Colorado Public Health and Environment. We have some people in there, we want to be able to get that air quality thing knocked out right away, so we're not way down the line and then trying to bring them in. So I reached out, and I have a couple people there that will be included in our future talks. And then there was another commission that was set up for I think it's called Wildfire Ready Watersheds. Okay, so I reached out there to that to get the director of that as well, just because it was brought to my attention that's going on too, and there might be some things that we have similarities in working, and the more partners and more people involved will hopefully help us push that along. So that's kind of where we're at, where we're sitting. If anybody has any questions or anything that I might have missed or misspoke on, anybody that was on those, please let me know. But yeah, that's kind of all I have, and we don't have anything set right now. I'm hoping after these next meetings here, we're really going to start moving that ball. We finally kind of got everybody in the room, and it's been a little slow going, but it's such an important topic, and there's so much, and there's things that are happening. So we really wanted to make sure we're doing it right as we're going, and not push anybody away or not get the right people there. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's what I have on my items.
Thank you, Clark. I have a quick question, and then I'll see if anyone else does. There is a professor at CSU who is, I guess, one of the regional experts on air quality and in relation to wildfire, and also Dr. Scott Denning. And so I'm just wondering if you have reached out to any of those folks too. That might, I've been trying to get him to come speak in Larimer County, but I know that's his focus is air quality and the concerns are all going forward from wildfires.
I have not. I have I have a couple the state employees, the only ones that I've been able to contact with. Trying to remember, it's Ogletree's his last name. I can't try to scroll here for the email. I can't remember what his name is, or his first name is. And then he's got another person that he included that was involved with the prescribed fire side of the house. But no, I do not have them. If you pass me, I would absolutely reach out to them and see if we can't get them included too, because, yeah.
Great. I will, I'll get that name and email and forward that to you. So thank you. And thank you for your presentation. I know it's been a lot of effort trying to get all of the stakeholders in the room and trying to get everyone to agree to schedule. It's quite a monumental task, as we all know. So I will now see if see Mr. Morgan's hand is raised.
Just a couple comments and a couple questions. Obviously, this pile burning versus prescribed burning has been controversy or whatever. Balance, I think, would be a better term, has been going on for a long time. And for example, there's, from the industry side, there's two completely different sets of equipment and operations to do the two different processes. So for a long time, we've had a lop and scatter management scheme for doing timber harvest or fuels reduction. And then we run essentially prescribed fire through the forest afterwards as a method of cleanup. And then the pile burning, obviously, we concentrate all the slash at the landing, burn it. And the pluses of the pile burning is you burn on the days you want to burn, and you get less smoke and better air quality for the same amount of fuel reduced, because you can control that and you control the fuel arrangement. So every time we keep getting different readings as to which way we're going to go. And like the Arapahoe Roads National Forest, right now their forest supervisor said, we're going with pile burning. We're going to put it on the landing and we're going to burn piles. And that's how we're going to do our slash reduction. And so that's my home forest. So we're looking at equipping ourselves with a proper machinery, because in the past we have been a lop and scatter reburn organization. And I don't want to extrapolate what's happening here to the rest of the state of Colorado. But do you have any indicator as to what the rest of the Front Range or the rest of the state is looking at? More pile burning or more emphasis on the controlled fire broadcast burn?
So yeah, and I didn't if I misspoke or having it, we're not necessarily zeroing in and doing the piles. I just know there's a lot of groups, and there's where we're at right now, we have, you know, more piles than we do capacity to take care of it. And all you're doing is putting a bunch of Kindle out there, you know, that could be unfortunate for other things when we're doing that. So that was kind of the initial push, but it is going to be a balance of the both and you know, ultimately being able to do the big broadcasts and stuff, it would be, you know, nice if we get everybody on the same page. I just know, you know, there was just that fire in New Mexico that was their largest, and it was prescribed fire that, you know, got out of control. And there's been a few other little hiccups that's made people hesitant. So we're trying to get like to say right time, right people, right resources, you know, right environments, getting all those locked up. And I know too, I didn't mention it because it's not necessarily part of that. We did kind of talk about it in some of the initial meetings, but DFPC has a what's it called? The air curtain operation going on now too. So they're doing that stuff as well in places to try to help with the air quality and everything. So to answer your, sorry, I rambled there. Answer your question. Yeah, we will be doing a combination of both, and it will be a balance. We just wanted a place to kind of step and start, and, you know, to jump into, you know, broadcast, having it takes a bit more. And, you know, it was in, what was it, 2016, whatever, when it all happens, basically the prescribed fire kind of landed in DFPC's lap. And so, you know, they have certain things that they're trying to look at and do. You know, they have the certification program, and we're doing all that stuff, but we're just trying to ramp it up and being able to involve and the biggest part is probably getting a good media push, and I think some of that in those local communities, just understanding some of that, because I know there's a lot of negativity and there are a lot of miscues on what prescribed fire is and or controlled burn, or however you want to label it or doing it. But yeah, we will be using kind of a balance of both in the perfect world, and we're going to have hopefully multiple organizations that are tackling that stuff, so it's not just one group trying to run around. That way we can all work together.
Did you want to build on top of that, Mr. Morgan? Then I'll ask my
Just for a
question.
moment, yes.
Yeah, and then I see Rob.
The reason I was asking is that this is obviously a real hot topic, if you want to say that, for industry, and it is really two very different approaches to your harvesting and fuels management work. And our meeting next week comes up with Forest Service, our annual meeting for the Intermountain Forest Association, and I'm sure that this will come up down there as to how we're gonna go about it. And so at this point, what I'm going to take back to that is that you are looking at it right now, still very much a two-pronged approach. Is that what I'm hearing? A balanced approach?
Yeah, I can share with you too that the strategic plan that the FPC and Colorado State Forest Service kind of came up with, and you can see there's it's not necessarily just that. There are a lot of other things going, and like you said, it is a hot topic. There's other variables, but yeah, as of going out the gate right now, are not necessarily the most important topic or priority, but it was those piles, just because I know there's been a lot of talk, because we are getting all those piles and they're gathering them up, but we just haven't been able to take care of them, and that's statewide. And eventually, hopefully, we can get into more broadcast and get into it. And I know the air curtain burner program's taking off too to try to assist with that. So we do have a few, not necessarily two-pronged, but we do have some things that are working on it.
I think your pile burning is a really good approach for this reason. So many of these piles are showing up on private property, and so therefore, if those people have got a tool, that gives you a tool to get those people to buy in for public support for your fuels management work. I mean, that's the problem they see right in front of them. So I think that would be a good emphasis. I really do. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan, and thank you, Clark. I had a quick question. I know that we are actually having a air curtain burner demonstration up here with the NGOs and the Love & Fire that they purchased one. It is happening at a specific facility inside city limits, but when they're trying to do a train-the-trainer, but they've run into issues with permitting, with what the county can do. A private landowner backed up and said no, but then also we need to have something from the Bureau of Reclamation and maybe the federal government. And so it seems like there's lots of layers of folks that we had to get permitting. And so it's almost like you have to plan this so far in advance. So I'm curious, are you hearing that from other regions or agencies that are trying to employ or maybe do some of this training or some of this work in various areas? Are they having similar issues with trying to get permission or permitting and things like that?
I'd have to speak, reach out with Vaughn and I haven't heard anything back, but I haven't necessarily probably asked the right questions either, so that they might be. I'll ask and see, and maybe there's they've learned some little tips or tricks or something too, to have, but I'll follow up with that, with you.
Great. And just to let you know, I when all those doodle polls came out for meetings, I was actually watching my son graduate from grad school, so I was not available to fill those out. I'll get those done. I just haven't caught up with the mountain of emails and work since I got back. So, and we had things like the special session and stuff that kind of took my attention off catching up. So I appreciate that. I'll get that done today. Mr. Rob, would you? What's your question?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And first, am I okay asking a question as a guest? Just want to make sure I'm following procedure here.
Yeah, what's our procedure, Courtney? I think it's okay if I invite them to speak as a chair?
Yeah, of course. Mhm.
Okay,
I think
great, thank you.
I think if I invite you as a chair, then you can ask a question. So go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And thanks for that overview, Clark. I was curious related to the air quality piece and the work you're doing with CDPHE, if that's specific to pile burning and the number of piles that can be burned on a given day. I'm aware of the caps that are in place related to number of piles and know that as a barrier in terms of getting the piles burned. Or is it a little broader, or is it sort of still in the works, TBD, in terms of what the full scope of that will be?
I'll say, yeah, TBD, but I won't necessarily, not looking, because I don't want to, hone in and focus on one thing. I do want a kind of a broader spectrum, so we're kind of tackling it all, but we haven't had them in the conversations yet, so we haven't really touched base on all that. But yeah, we're hoping, obviously, to move forward with pile burning. So if that's the first hurdle we have to do just to establish that, we will, just so we can get some of that stuff going. Because I know, and Morgan mentioned with, some of those on the private lands, and we do have some groups out there that are kind of running full speed ahead because there are on private lands are having it that they're ready to tackle it. I think, yeah, bringing this up now is great because it is on a lot of people's minds. But yeah, back to you, Rob. We don't necessarily, we haven't spoke with them yet, but we're going to focus on pile, and then we're obviously just kind of as an overview. And I didn't mention it before too, the other big hot topic, and we sent a letter to the AG as well, that went up because the liability is another, big issue and topic. And that's one of those that's like, you don't necessarily want to, put it on your plate to do for, somebody else having it. So we're trying to figure out some of those aspects as well. So that's why we have, some completely off topic, but insurance is one of those things that were coming up with the Colorado Fire Commission. And as you've seen in California, Florida, even here, some of the they're not issuing out new policies, and there's some things there. So we're trying to dive into that as well.
Great, thank you.
Oops, sorry.
I
Sorry, I see all the names go up, but it usually tells me which goes first. It's not. So let's start with Pat, and then we'll go to Courtney, and then Mr. Morgan.
I think Courtney was first, but to avoid bogging down the process, I'll go ahead and go, Courtney. I just had a question, and that is, I'm interested in some of the detail in the strategic plan. Can you post a link in the chat or anything where we can find it online? And thank you very much.
I will put that over there right now. I meant to do it earlier, and I got distracted.
Okay, great. Courtney, what was your question?
Yeah, Clark, I was just hoping you would clarify the two subcommittees. One is on prescribed fire and the other is non-governmental partnerships, or what exactly was the other subcommittee?
So we have the overall subcommittee is prescribed fire subcommittee, and then we broke down into two task forces: the non-government organizations involved with the prescribed fire, and then increase for burning capacity task force. But both of those ended up compiling into one. What that new name's going to be, I'm not sure. Hopefully, they don't combine it all because that'll be a really long name. But yeah, so we just have one, but it's concentrating on increasing our capacity for burning because, as as mentioned, we have a lot of piles on there right now, and we don't have the ability to have it. So we're trying to increase that, as well as reaching out to the non-government organizations that are involved too, just to include them and try to work together.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Actually, I'm curious which non-governmental organizations have you been working with? I know of a couple involved in Prescribed Fire, but I feel like I need to be aware of maybe a few more.
Yeah, we had some, and we're waiting to, because that was their focus after the last meeting was for that. So this next subcommittee meeting, we should have more of those involved, and I can give you a hard answer on everybody that is involved. So if you bear with me, like after the holidays, of the first or second week of January is what we're trying to work. And by all means, if you want to be included or sit on any of those, just let me know and we can get you in there.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks, Clark.
Yep.
Thank you, Courtney. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, sure. Clark, your previous comment there on the insurance and the side of it, the legal side of that, essentially, this state had a complete overhaul of the regulations that they had in place after the Lower North Fork fire. Obviously, that was a pivotal item. And our new governor then, Hickenlooper, they had some major changes in your authorities. And this group is actually the action group for changes that would be needed statutorily to get through our state house to allow you to do some of the things that I think you're going to need to do. I think you're going to have some actual changes there, law changes and insurance changes. So I think you're right on in looking into that, because several times in the past, people have tried to approach this, and the hang up is always from the regulatory legal side and from the insurance side. And there was going way back, there was, I think, a $600,000 state cap. Well, that went out with Lower North Fork fire settlement. And I think we're going to have to reimpose. You're going to have to work on somebody. This is a tough nut. Somebody's going to have to work on this, and you're going to have to come up with it, or you can do all this other work and you're not going to have the authority to be able to get it done. And so I don't know where you're going with that. Good luck. I would help in any way that I could, but I think you're going to have to come up with that one.
We had our last fire commission meeting. It was kind of, we did bring it up because, like I said, California, they're hurting right now. They had like 4 of the big names pull out and doing it. So we brought in Michael Conway. I don't know exactly. The Division of Insurance, the commissioner for insurance there, that he came in and presented, kind of talking about some of the stuff. And so there was it piqued everybody's interest. I think that's one of those top things. I'm hoping after our January meeting, we are going to dive into that. And we'll be looking, and that's something else again. If that's something, of anybody interested in that, we can reach out and get you guys in that subcommittee.
I looked into this several years ago after Lower North Fork, and at the time I looked at just folks that I had personal relationships with. I knew the state forester down in New Mexico real well. I knew the one in Wyoming real well at the time, and how they solved it. And basically they had legal authority through the state that Colorado does not have, and to my knowledge that hasn't been addressed. So at some point you're going to have some regulatory, not just the insurance side, but your regulatory. The regulatory atmosphere is going to be what allows insurance companies to operate, to do the work you want to do. See what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I know it's because they were looking at big picture and kind of an overhaul, doing it because.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on there, but yeah, we'll make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, great, Clark. We appreciate you being here today and answering all of our questions and doing the presentation. And obviously, a lot of work to do, and a lot of people coming together to work together on this. I did send you back an email just now, so to the facilitator. So we have some other items we have to get through today. Excuse me. But I think that if we continue to have further questions, we can always if you'd be open to that, maybe if someone else has a question, we can send them to Courtney and she can forward it on to you. And just really appreciate your time today and the work that you do with the Fire Commission and your department. So we wish you all a happy Friday and happy holidays, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you so much. Save you guys.
Great.
Having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Okay. So we got a few other topics. I think we could talk about that for a long time, but we got some other agenda items to get through to stay within our hour. So our next item is we want to talk about kind of refinement of the topics that we have talked, and then some of those topics that came from the Gates Family Foundation. And we want to just kind of refinement of the policy entrance and kind of potential topics for these presentations. Our next presentation on the 17th will be Director Gibbs will come talk about the fire, the National Fire Commission in that presentation. And so that will be a important conversation, and we'll probably have a lot of that being the main presentation for that day. So I'm going to have Courtney lead this discussion because I know she had some a list of things she wanted us to kind of refine and talk about today. Thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Yeah, it's going to be really wonderful to have Director Gibbs at our next meeting. Director Morgan said that he was also available, so we might have like a powerhouse team at our December 15th meeting talking about the Federal Fire Commission and its report. We also have Katie on the schedule for February. We had talked a little bit about doing a double meeting, just like we did for the Gates Family Foundation, where the first one sort of sets the landscape, what are some of the challenges that people are facing, and then the second meeting really gets into solutions, like what's working for people on the ground. So we had been talking a little bit, Katie and I, about doing a back-to-back session in February for her to talk about the collaboratives and the successes they're having. We have a few blank meetings in December and January. And so I wanted to talk to you all about the items that we have on our list already, and then see if there was anything from Whitney's presentation on the Mass Timber Coalition. If there was any piece of that that really sparked your interest, I would put some effort into finding more people to speak on those topics and to elaborate on some of the specifics. So I will share my screen and you guys can look at the list that we made a few months ago, and then you guys can pull out either things here that are top priorities or if there's anything from the Gates Family Foundation presentation.
And one thing I just wanted to bring up, Courtney, I know we have and I'm sorry, I'm at the 15th, not the 17th. It's getting into that holiday season. I know we have, so we may not, I don't know what the desire of the group is, but we may not want to have another meeting just because of having quorum. We don't want anybody to miss any important for information. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there for us to think about. And then when we get back into January, we'll have probably a update of where bills are at maybe, and where, from the recommendations, because they should all drop that first week. So kind of I think that's kind of an important, that first meeting in January, because we should have a pretty clear picture of which bills are what. So
okay. So maybe you're saying the first week in January, that first meeting, January 12th, might be a good idea to just do a legislative update.
Yeah, I think so. Unless the members don't, I think that could be a part of that, but we can also add another smaller topic. I just figure, we still have, we're kind of, this stuff we're doing now is working on things for 2025, but we need to kind of also keep an eye on what we had put up for recommendations and how that's hitting the legislative floor. So that's my recommendation. And I'm open for the group if they don't want to do that, but I just want to kind of keep us focused also on what we're trying to get accomplished for this session. All right, anybody have any, do we need to also bring and just show up, as everyone got the list from what Courtney had brought up, or for Whitney from the previous presentation, some of the recommendations?
I can pull that up as well.
Okay.
And
I
the
think it
last
was in,
notes.
yeah, if someone wants, you can always go back and pull it up from your,
Yeah, so I'll pull up Whitney's recommendations and then I'll go through some of the topics that we had already highlighted.
so the one was the code barriers about height restrictions, and I kind of want to caution the group about maybe addressing that at this time between the WUI code board bill that's group that's working. Also, there's several land use bills that are broken up to several bills coming out, because I've also been working on, as commissioners, we've been working on, well, we haven't, but we've been watching probably a dozen bills or more already, and we know that's come up. And so that's a big topic that I think we probably want to talk about carefully, because that's as local governments control flexibility. That's a little bit of a sensitive area right now. I just want to kind of, if we're going to have that conversation, we should talk about that too. So just want to kind of put that out there. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. So some of the other topics that Whitney brought up is mandated use of wood products in the built environment, investments around construction projects, research and development, and forest management, demand activation roadmaps and advisory councils, and decarbonization approaches, so like full life cycle assessments. So those were the items from Whitney's presentation. And then other items that we had on our list previously was hearing from the RMI Workforce Committee, learning more about how much biomass can be left on the landscape. I know the biomass report from the State Forest Service is coming out in 2024, and we can have someone present on that when it's available. I think that might have to do with the state of biomass as opposed to a critical look at fuels reduction and what's necessary, or like what are best practices for fuels reduction projects. Brett Wolk said he would be happy to talk about that topic or recommend other people who can speak to that topic as well. And then we had brought up liability coverage. And so I was going to reach out to CAL FIRE and see if anyone might be able to speak about what California is doing around this topic. And James was going to check in with people from the State Forest Service to see if they had any connections on those topics. So these are sort of the pieces at play and the topics that we've discussed before. And, since we do have limited meetings, I wanted the committee to have the chance to pinpoint the most important topics to them so we could be sure to prioritize these.
Let's first maybe address, do we want to have, we have a meeting on the 15th. Do we want to have a meeting well, we have today and tomorrow, so that takes care of December really, right? Or we don't have another meeting until January 12th, or?
There is technically a meeting scheduled for December 29th.
Okay.
And I think the next one is January 12th after that.
So first, let's just address that. I'm open to that. I'm going to be around. We're having a limited schedule, but I want to honor everyone's time, and I know a lot of people might be traveling and stuff. So let's first just kind of address that. Thoughts on having a meeting on the 29th? Mr. Morgan.
Perfectly personal reasons, I would rather not have one on the 29th, but we can do what we have to do here. That's my 50th wedding anniversary. We might be traveling a little bit.
Happy anniversary. And I'm celebrating my 30th just like a day or so after that. So that's pretty cool. Congratulations. That's amazing. All right. Any other Thoughts on that? Pat, I see your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually going to go as far as to move that we cancel the December 29th meeting. I think there will be a lot of people that will be out, including folks in state government.
Okay. Well, if you're making, I welcome that motion. Pat's making that motion. Is there a second? Mr. Morgan. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to cancel the December 29th meeting, and there's a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay, thank you all for that conversation and that discussion. So now we're on the 12th. We have half an agenda, I think, just to make sure we have, and I'm sure James or Daphne can come that day and give us the latest and greatest that day. So, James.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I just wanted to touch base. I don't know if Daphne or Courtney have got around to this group, but Daphne has asked, since I'm going to be at the Capitol watching some of this stuff, that I'll probably start to take over some of that legislative kind of like follow-up. So Daphne's always invited, but just know that I think moving forward in stuff like this, you guys are stuck with me, unfortunately.
We're happy to be stuck with you. And
Okay.
I know there's a lot of work to do, so I'm sure Daphne just being able, I mean,
The extra help, she likes it.
yeah. I hear it's gonna be another wild and topsy-turvy ride. So it will be interesting session. If there's any indication of the last couple of months. So that's great. So we'll have you on that for the first half of the agenda. So now you know what you're doing on January 12th. Great, appreciate that. Any other topics? I think having Brett come would be kind of interesting, I think. And that would be an easy one to, Mr. Morgan.
I personally am very interested in that topic because I think it's going to drive a whole lot of the other decisions that you make here. What you do, what's acceptable there and what's correct, I think is going to drive a whole lot of these other biomass utilization, broadcast burn, pile burning. It's going to be learning what we can learn there would direct a lot of the others. So I would very much like to hear what he has to say.
Great. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's going to be a meeting and a half. Because I think if we have half a session, I think it's going to be a meeting and a half, quite frankly, in my opinion. But again, I'm always open to all of you. I think this is a big topic for us to kind of tackle. Christy, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. I am interested also, I agree with Mark, I'm interested in anything having to do with fuels reduction and also insurance. I'm interested in learning about the roadblocks. And then as far as the the mass timber goes, I'm a little bit, that's way down on my list, particularly because of their first topic being talking about mandates. So, we just listened to a presentation and heard, what kind of roadblocks are thrown up with all of the mandates and regulation. And so for the mass timber stuff, talking about more regulation, I'm lost. That's way down at the bottom of my list. And I feel like with that, it's a little bit premature. That stuff needs to, for the mass timber, it needs to work itself out. And so I'd rather focus our efforts on things that we can have an impact on, which would be fuels reduction and insurance. My 2 cents. Thanks.
No, appreciate your input. Thank you. Well, Courtney, that sounds like a lot of meetings. I think we're all the way into February, March, right? Which is with that, is that, or at least end of February?
Yes. So let me look at my little calendar real quick. Yes. So if on January 12th, we'll do a legislative update. I think January 26th, we can invite Brett to talk about biomass. We have Katie scheduled for 1 or 2 meetings in February. And then, yeah, it would be great if we can have someone talk more about insurance, possibly successes or potential solutions to roadblocks, other ideas. So we're definitely filling up. I also just want to ask, you talked about doing a meeting and a half for the biomass conversation. So I'm wondering if you're interested in having an extended meeting that day, or if you'd rather it perhaps on January 12th, we start the biomass conversation, and on January 26th, we continue it. That's another option for this very large, complex topic.
Both great suggestions. I see James' hands is raised, and then I'll just have you all kind of jump in of how you feel about that. James.
Thanks, Commissioner. I think that's a really good segue too, because just want to remind this group that the Forest Service has their statewide biomass assessment coming out. It should be done by the end of this calendar year. So if there is any kind of wish to have the people that put that together to kind of do like a joint presentation with Brett at that time or after, just remember that we do have that available resource that should be ready come January. So I don't know if that changes the meeting kind of outcome, but just wanted to remind you about that.
Excellent point. And I think that would be great timing to kind of leverage that. And yes, Pat, we will have to have that as a standing agenda item for every meeting to have all the updates. And we might have to pivot or move with some of those things. So we have to have that flexibility in the schedule to make sure we address those items probably as a priority first. So we have Mr. Morgan and then Katie after that.
Yes, I was kind of excited about Director McCombs and Director Morgan's presentations, because I thought that they would address a lot of essentially the biomass issues in what they're planning to. I was looking forward to that information. So if we can have an additional follow-up to that, James, that would be fine. But I'm hoping that we're going to get that and what they're going to present to us as well. I think there should be a great deal of that. So we can, I want to see what they're going to do, and then judging from that, it would determine how much more time we might need for the follow-up meeting in my mind.
So before I go to Katie, I think that's a great point. I think to get that ahead of time for us all to read and digest and kind of, so we're not just here for the first time, but we've done some homework and kind of have formed in our mind some questions we have, but that might be really important. I don't know if everyone's open to extending. I know we want to be look at that, but also if we have to have this on both, as Pat brought up, we have to have the other meeting too, having a legislative update. We might have to have a big, portion of that to discuss any amendments or changes, or sending a report to get a full, approval from the council. Full council. And I believe we have a full council meeting in January, and so we might need to make a report for that. So I'm thinking it would be nice to have. It's up to you all, just having both meetings kind of legislative updates and then the rest of this. So, but I also want to honor the time of those folks, not having both directors come both times. Does that make sense? So do we have them come for one and then have other staff follow up for the second one? I don't know what that looks like. So, so let's go to Katie, and then let's get some feedback from you. We have one other item we need to discuss before we leave today. Go ahead, Katie.
I'm going to change the topic a little bit, so I don't know if you want to discuss that first.
Yeah, please, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Thank you. All right, so what does everyone feel about that? And Courtney, help me kind of keep track. So we have the 12th, we would do half of a legislative, or probably, let's just give it a little bit of half, because we have a lot of bills to talk about. And then we would have both directors come that day to present on the plan, or just Brett?
I think it would so I don't think Brett is going to be talking about the biomass study.
Okay.
I think he's going to be talking more about the research that he's done with the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute. We could have Brett come and tee up his discussion on January 12th and really dive into it on the 26th. Or we can just have Brett come on the 26th, and we can see if someone who was working on the State Forest Service biomass study can come. Perhaps if the committee has read the study ahead of time, we can really just have the authors there to answer questions on the 12th following the legislative update.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. So can everyone commit? I mean, I know it's a busy time of year, but I think unless, and someone feels they can't, but everyone, I'm sure you all are a fantastic group, do a lot of work. Are we all willing to commit to read the study and make some notes? So when we can maybe even send them ahead of time to the presenters so he can kind of be prepared. Does that thumbs up? Okay. Sounds great. So as soon as that comes out, James or Courtney, I'm assuming, will send it to us. And then if you have some big arching questions, can you send them to Courtney and then in an email, and then we will get those ahead of time so they just kind of know, they're kind of, in case they need to bring some other data points or slides or something. So and that will kind of help us refine or help us utilize the time. Does everyone want to keep? Let's see. I to keep it sometimes. Oh, was there? I'm missing questions. Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know that during the session, there's a lot of updates, and especially at the beginning of the session, it gets pretty crazy. We may need to keep some of the more educational content for later on in the year when we slow down a little bit. And I would be supportive of that, to be fair to the speakers so that we don't cut them short on time, and to be fair to this group.
I agree. Any other thoughts on that? And this is, this doesn't have to be set in stone. As we go forward, we can kind of tweak this going, forward, but at least we know, we have a big meeting on the 15th, and then we know what's kind of coming for the 12th. And that's also to honor and respect the time for staff to be able to prep for that meeting now and not have to do it during the holidays. I know because of the special session, a lot of our staff are going to be working through the holidays now. So, just trying to kind of remember that everyone's going to be in and out, and we want to kind of help with that. So no problems, Julie. Thanks for letting us know. And I think I just feel like with since this is really important for us to focus on the what's happening in the legislative, we have questions. I think we still need to make that a big portion of our agenda going forward. So I don't know if anyone else feels differently about that. I see the comments in the question, but we have to be able to kind of see if we can get some of these priorities through and keep an eye on them. Does that help, Courtney? Are we?
Yeah, that does help. I want to share our calendar for recommendations, for our recommendation process. This is the calendar we were working on a couple months ago. And in it, we decided that come mid-March, early April, this committee wanted to hone in on some of the recommendations for the next legislative session. So we have on our calendar all of February and the beginning of March to hear presentations from experts and discuss recommendations that you might want to make to the legislature. So if we want to push some of these things back, we have some flexibility. We don't need to stuff January and February because we have a few more weeks in March. So I do, appreciate what Pat was saying about maybe giving people time. So I think either way, I think we can do short legislative updates at the beginning of every meeting, or if we feel like we need a whole meeting to discuss potential amendments, because I realized that did take a long time last year, was discussing amendments, drafting amendments, making sure the language was right. So maybe it would be best to leave a meeting open for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's very rare that a bill, for someone who thought they were changing one sentence in a bill, then all of a sudden it became a big, we have to be ready for, I just want to change one sentence in statute and end up being a huge deal. So I think that we should probably make sure we give that flexibility for us to be able to react to that, because that's kind of important. James, you had your hand raised.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So think on that. And also I was wondering, Courtney or James or all of us, as we starting to go through and talking, like we talked about refinement, can we start a list of topics already? So we don't have to have a meeting where we're trying to go back and think backwards on all the things we've talked about. If we have things that pop up in meetings, can we just kind of put them on the parking lot so that when we get to that meeting, we're not creating from a blank slate. We can kind of from each meeting, maybe add some ideas to the list while it's fresh, and then we can go back and refine that list. Does that sound like a good plan for folks? Okay, I see thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
We have 4 minutes left, and I want to honor our time. We have one last item, and this is kind of important because this is something we've talked about, and I know Courtney's going to be able to do this very quickly because it's kind of a, when we had discussed it, was a very interesting. So go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, so the last thing we wanted to talk about was a budget appropriation for the Forest Health Council. This came up at the last full council meeting because the council started to, dream big and have big ideas about things that it wanted to accomplish, especially within its statutory duties. So James and I started talking about a potential budget for the council, an annual budget, what we thought we might need for travel, what we thought we might need for special projects, and we're still refining that. So just internally, we need to do that a little bit more. James is also checking in with State Forest Service leadership to see how much Healthy Forest Vibrant Communities could potentially still support the council expenses in the coming year. And then the DNR's budget director let me know that if the council did want an annual appropriation, that would likely go through DNR's budget process as opposed to being like a State Forest Service to the Wildfire Matters Review Committee sort of process. So I wanted to let you all know that we're still talking about it and we're digging into it, and maybe we'll have an update at the next meeting, but it's moving forward.
Hi, Aaron, go ahead and ask your question. We have just a couple minutes left. Just want to warn you, we might cut you short.
It's a very quick question, and I'm just trying to catch up. But Courtney and James, that would be a budget appropriation starting in 2025 session as opposed to the coming 2024 session. Is that what you're working towards?
Yes,
Great.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so, Mr. Morgan.
Just real quick, the big question is, we're here to try to advise our public servants and officials here. I think the question when you ask for money is, have you earned it? So maybe we need to look at that among ourselves. Are we earning our keep and getting these people assistance that they really need? So if you ask for money from the state government, you better say, what have you done to earn it?
Well, I think, having us come and do those projects, and also if we want to do that, the Full Forest Health Council wants to look at that 30-year plan and facilitation or printing, all that stuff. I think that comes, so those are, I don't know, just some things. I think that was where the money was also looking at. So, okay. So we're at 1 minute over. Any burning desires, send an email to Courtney and we'll see you on the 15th. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to let from.
No, I just wanted to throw that in the chat before we end, but we don't need to discuss it. We can discuss in future meetings.
And when's that meeting coming up, Katie?
Ooh, I think it's still out for a poll.
Okay, that's what I thought too, because I was out of town for the deadline because I just could not, I didn't have enough hours in the day to catch up. So anyway, I want to just say thank you all. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Appreciate all their time and just really appreciate and Courtney, could you just kind of capture her comment so we can kind of throw that back in the next meeting, bring that up. And then we wish you all a wonderful weekend. Thank you all for your work. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So move.
I'd so move. Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Great. See you on the 15th, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
Friday. Take care.